Want to be better than 99% of players? Then here's a couple tips to become a pro. Before we begin, I just want to say this video is more catered to higher level players who are trying to transition into the competitive world. If you are not in the high level, then I highly recommend focusing on punishment, movement, and all that fun mumbo jumbo before you watch this video. The best damage is always situational. This concept is the most obvious when it comes to your combos. Most people fall into the trap that more damage equals better combo. And in a lot of fighting games, that is the case. However, in a 3D game where there are a bunch of random and unpredictable things, not only is damage important, but also consistency. So in short, the combos that are the most consistent and give you the most damage for being consistent typically end up being the best combos. You need to understand that a lot of the most damaging combos in this game not only have a lot of execution barriers, but are often just flat out unreliable because they require a specific access, or they just straight up don't work on certain characters. So instead of wasting your time with all of that, save yourself the stress and trouble by just doing the most damage you can get consistently. That isn't to say never do anything that is big boy in any shape or form, but be realistic as to what big boy stuff you end up going for. There are big boy things you can get reliably in a tournament setting, and there are others that are just not feasible to do, even if you can do it consistently. I'll give you a quick example with ending combos with Paul. The most damaging option to end a combo with is typically a just frame demo man. And while this is the most damaging option by 1 point of damage, you need to land the just frame to get the most damage. Not only will failing to land the just frame get you 1 point less of damage versus wall running 2, but wall running 2 offers incredible Oki and can even spike, leading to even more damage. So really ask yourself, what is the better option, and is that little bit of extra damage for all that execution really worth it? There's a million other examples like this, but this is just one of the many. Another way to optimize your damage is adjusting your punishments. For example, if your opponent does a very risky move that leaves them -15 and up, most of the cases you're going to want to do your launch punish combo. However, if their back is facing the wall, you're going to get nowhere near as much damage as you would out in the open. This is where you should opt for something like a wall splat of some shape or form, as shown here. Another example is when certain moves put you in awkward situations, despite whatever the minus amount they show on screen is. Whether it is pushback or a awkward hitbox situation, you need to adjust your punishes to maximize the amount of damage you get from dealing with these attacks. While unfortunately this forces you to lab some of these attacks, if you have a situation for one of these attacks, there's a chance it will work with another attack that puts you in the same situation. Scrambles and momentum. In Tekken 8, it's more important than ever to maintain offense and pressure as much as humanly possible. But the reality is that you are not always going to be able to maintain that offense. And while trying to get your turn back, or your opponent trying to do the same, you may end up in that awkward situation that is a scramble. Scrambles can happen and occur in many different ways, but typically they are the most prevalent when both players are really close to dying or on low health, and all it would take is 1 or 2 attacks to steal all the momentum and close out the round. If you want to win a hell of a lot more of your games, then prioritize winning these very important moments in a game, as they can be the match deciding moment as to who wins that game, or maybe even set. While the round may have ended, the mental momentum may still carry, which makes it all the more important to get yourself together and play the most sharp if you can in these situations, because I guarantee you your opponent isn't, no matter how good they are. And of course, you will not be playing at your best in these situations, but all you have to do is be a little more sharper than your opponent. If you are able to win these scrambles consistently, you would be surprised how many rounds after end up becoming free because that mental momentum from that scramble is still in their head and throwing them off. It takes a very, and I mean very strong player to rub that off and get back in the game mentally. One way you can achieve this is by consolidating the moves you do when your opponent is near death. Your generic moves like your down fours, down forward ones, and jabs are some of the best tools in the game to close out rounds because they are very fast and can interrupt a lot of things your opponent can do. This doesn't mean you can't use other moves in your move list, but try to be careful doing very risky moves, especially if you have the momentum. If your opponent blocks it, you're just gambling a lot when you clearly had an advantage when you didn't have to overextend. And sometimes you can just outright avoid a scramble altogether by just getting away from your opponent. Especially if you have the life lead, a significant advantage, it's better to just let your opponent come to you because time is against them. They have to make the commitment. Let them overextend. Just be careful to not let them get some super crazy momentum and use it for a moment to fish for a counter hit or see a hole in their offense. This brings me to the next point, which is psychology. Understanding psychology in Tekken is probably one of, if not the most difficult aspect of Tekken, as it goes beyond just playing Tekken, as it forces you to dive inside the mind of your opponent to maximize all of your opportunities against your opponent. But how does one dive into the mind of their opponent during a game? There's a few ways to do this, and one way to achieve this is conditioning. In short, this is the process of doing a move over and over to the point where your opponent will just think you're gonna do that because you keep doing it. But then when you realize, oh, they are thinking I'm going to do that move again, you do something else. Anakin has a great video showing this live in a Tekken 7 ranked match if you were curious. Timing is another way to do this. What I mean by timing, I mean changing the timing you do when you use certain moves. So if you play Paul, don't just run up and demo man, maybe wait a few seconds, wait for them to get up and then do the demo man and see what happens. Adjusting your timing will make moves so much more difficult for your opponent to react and counter. What's funny is sometimes an opponent will have the correct read on you, but because you adjusted your timing, they will get counter hit by the move they planned on reading you for because you adjusted your timing. It is kind of an interesting phenomenon. And the last way of doing this sometimes is to just not use your plus frames, which might sound crazy in Tekken 8, but sometimes holding back and seeing what your opponent will do could be a deciding factor of how easy or difficult a matchup is. A lot of pro players will just sometimes throw out their plus frame moves and just hold back or backdash just to see what you do, analyze you, and dissect your brain on the spot without unga bunga mindlessly mashing. Obviously, they don't do this every time, but you see it more often than not at the highest levels because it helps get that psychology understanding of their opponent more effectively. And the best players will only reveal their bag of tricks at the moments that are the most important and not right off the bat. Whiff punishment. There is a reason every YouTube video teaching you how to play this game tells you to Korean backdash and learn your frame data properly, because both of those concepts, if studied and learned properly, can help you learn to develop whiff punishment, which is the creme de la crop of anyone's punishment. This in short is punishing a move that does not connect on you, that quote unquote whiffs. The reason this is the most creme de la crop of all of your movement and punishment is mainly because it is the most wild, random, and unpredictable. While every combo guide video talks about what the punishes are on block are, never or rarely do they ever talk about what the best whiff punishers are for any character in that regard. And while I can't tell you what the whiff punish for your character is, I can help simplify the situation dramatically. There are two types of whiff punish situations, either from A, backdashing, or B, from sidestepping. Depending on the character you play, you will probably only ever need 1 to 3 whiff punishers. We'll use King as an example. The main whiff punisher King uses is forward 2-1, as it has a ton of reach, is a heat engager, and even launches on heat, and does a good chunk of damage, and can whiff punish pretty much anything in the game very effectively. In almost every situation for a whiff punish, you want to use this move. However, if you do a sidestep with King, it's probably better to do a back 1-2 or a hop kick. However, be very careful when it comes to launchers from a sidestep, because you will not be getting the regular combo you normally do. There's a really good chance you will be off axis and you will need to adjust your combo accordingly. And if you do have to do that, like most characters, you're going to be losing a ton of damage because you are not doing your regular combo route. And also be very careful doing launchers with specific characters. Paul, for example, has a really hard time using down forward 2 as a sidestep whiff punish, because if the opponent is too far away, you will just get this awkward stagger on hit and you will get no damage. So once you have a good grasp on your regular block punishment and movement, try to find 2 to 3 moves that you can consistently use to whiff punish and work in almost any whiff punish situation. Again, whiff punishment can get a lot more complicated than I'm talking about it here, but this is just a watered down, simplified version of how to mentally and properly handle whiff punishment. Learning other matchups. It's no surprise that you need more than a general understanding of all the characters to perform well in tournaments. And it is definitely more viable to play multiple characters in tournaments than not to. However, you don't have to play multiple characters in tournaments to become an incredible player who is worthy of winning majors. But what those players who only play one character in tournaments do, however, is play other characters when they play ranked or online, so they can get a better understanding of the matchups they are dealing with, as playing those characters is an amazing way to understand the psychology and what a player may think when using that said character. But sometimes you might not want to play a certain character. And what could help in your case is a training partner. In short, finding someone who plays the said character you are struggling with and have a death match with them. This is an amazing way to get really good at a specific matchup. I have a training partner named Pandaroni, and he mains bears, Kuma and Panda. And playing him over and over and over has gotten me very sharp at the bear matchup compared to other people. Just know learning matchups can be more versatile than you think, and you don't have to play every single character to get a good grasp of every single character. And a golden rule to help you learn a lot of matchups very quickly is knowing that a lot of characters steal moves from other characters. If you know how to block a snake edge with Brian, you know how to block a snake edge against Lily, Zafina, and a million other characters. That's about it for this video. The concepts I talked about here are very watered down in this video and are much more complicated in reality. And all of these concepts I talked about today are also impossible to master and are things that you just need to gradually improve on over time. No one can master a character in Tekken, and no one will ever master Tekken, no matter how many God of Destructions they have. And while you probably won't win Evo after watching this video, I hope you learned a thing or two, and I hope you can use some of these tips and tricks I have in this video to help you improve your gameplay and take it to the next level. If you enjoyed, also let me know how I can improve my videos. I only want to get better and better at making videos, so your feedback and opinions are extremely important to me, even if they're harsh, because sometimes you need a harsh reality check, and I would like that sooner than later. Take care, and I'll see you soon.